more battery.
Oh, fine then.
Okay. Set it up so it is. So we're meeting now.
Ask all legislators to take their seats. We will be starting shortly. All right, I'm going to call this meeting of the Nassau County Legislature to order. I'm going to we start off with the Pledge of Allegiance, and then please remain standing for a moment. I would ask Legislator Deborah Muley to lead us in the pledge. To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Just ask you to remain standing for one moment. We'll like to have a moment of silence for Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who passed away this weekend, and for her long and distinguished career both as an attorney and as a jurist. Thank you. Mr. Pulitzer, could you call the roll, please?
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The roll call. Deputy Presiding Officer Howard Coppell. Alternate Deputy Presiding Officer Denise Ford. Legislator Sheila Bino. Legislator Carrier Salage.
Here.
Legislator Deborah Muley. Legislator C. William Gaylord III.
Present.
Thank you. Legislator Vincent Muscarella.
Here.
Thank you. Legislator Ellen Birnbaum.
Here.
Wonderful. Here.
Legislator Delia DeRigi Witten. Legislator James Kennedy. Legislator Thomas McKevitt. Legislator Laura Schaefer. Legislator John Ferretti. Legislator Arnold Drucker. Legislator Rosemary Walker. Legislator Joshua Lafazan. Legislator Stephen Rhodes. Minority Leader Kavan Abrahams.
Here.
Thank you. And Presiding Officer Richard Nicolello. We have a quorum, sir.
Thank you. Start off with the public comment. We have 3 slips in. I'll be calling those, but if anyone else would like to submit a public comment and speak, I'd ask that you comment up to the clerk's office and fill out a form. First speaker is Pat Boyle from the Coalition of Youth Services.
Hello, everyone. I hope everybody's doing well through all of what we're going through here, and your families as well.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks. We received some good news in the county executive's proposed budget, in that youth services wasn't cut for 2021. That always comes with a bit of a caveat, and the caveat is kind of up to what the legislature wants to do with it afterwards. I got something from Laura Curran's office this morning that just came in an email, and it did say, in order to maintain critical social services and protect the county workforce from layoffs, I have asked NYFA to provide debt relief. I know that that's a bone of contention, and that you're going to handle it the way that you feel is best for all of you to handle it. But I'd just like you to remember that we are the non-essential services, right? That's what we've always been called. We're one of the first things that can be cut, and we know that. And we know that we're on the chopping block if money does have to be taken away because of whatever shortcomings there might be within the budget. But I'd just like you to think for a second what non-essential services really are and what the youth services agencies have done since March of last year when COVID really hit. It started out with food distributions because people were losing their jobs. They were getting laid off. So we started to do them individually and taking boxes of food around to families and making sure that they had what they needed to eat. Then it grew to things as big as we had 8,000 people at Belmont Racetrack who received food one day. And that was done by youth service agencies, along with the other community members as well, too. The volunteers, the fire departments, the police department, and everybody else who was involved. But it was youth service agencies who kind of took the lead on a lot of that. We've been providing counseling services to young people throughout this whole time, either through FaceTime or through meeting them at the food distributions or wherever else we were able to do that. Some of it was from overstimulation within the families. They were getting a little too close for comfort. And some of it had a lot to do with isolation as well, too, that they didn't have contact with their other friends and other people that they had. We were assisting schools with distance learning. Distance learning was a brand new thing. Nobody really knew how to do it or do it well. But what we did was we turned our programs around and turned them into virtual homework assistance programs so that way we could reinforce the lessons that came through during the day. Parents loved it. They went crazy for these programs. And right now we have so many people registered. I'm looking for more workers to be able to work in those programs. We kept young people employed during this time, which was important. We kept them, I know it's only 15 hours a week and it's basically at minimum wage, but when mom and dad have both lost their jobs, that little bit of money coming in made a big difference for these people. And so we were there to be able to do that. We didn't lay off one person in our agency, and I'm sure that's the copy in other agencies as well, too. And we also helped out with health care. We all have connections to health centers, to doctors, to hospitals, to other things. And we made sure that if somebody didn't know where to go, that we helped them with all of that. Those are non-essential services. Think about that for a second. Non-essential services. I can't believe we're called that sometimes. Well, I know that you also understand, too, that all of us were going through this as well, too. We all have families. We all have people who we love and who we're dealing with. We've had people who've gotten sick in our families and other things have happened. But we put some of that on a back burner to make sure that our communities were served and we could help them in any way we can. I hope you keep that in mind during your budget negotiations, and when push comes to shove, you can do for us what we've tried to do for the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Richard Clolery.
Is this thing on? Very good. To the members of the legislature, as you can see, the coronavirus did not get me. But because of the pandemic, I was not able to come in for a few months. However, I have returned to tell about the problems concerning the effects of the pandemic. For one, businesses, especially small businesses, have been severely affected to the point of going out of business. For example, the other day, I was heading towards Kohl's at the National Mall, and by chance, I happened to pass by Swirls and Twirls, and much to my dismay, it is closed for good. I used to go there a lot because it allowed me to mix and match my flavors and toppings. I used to layer my cup of ice cream over there. For another thing, there has been a very significant increase in litter all over East Meadow, due in large part to PPE being thrown to the ground, because either there were no trash cans or people are just plain lazy. This is very bad for the environment and not so good for the aesthetics of the neighborhood we live in. This must stop either by increasing the number of public trash cans in Nassau County or by collecting fines for littering. Money collected from fines should go to important endeavors, like increasing funding for buses here in Nassau County, for instance. The reason is, once we get a vaccine for COVID-19, we need ways to restore businesses here in Nassau County. I understand that we have a car culture here in Nassau County, but if we have buses, we can significantly increase the number of people who will shop, go to movies, eat out, etc., thereby increasing the tax revenue here in Nassau County. And we all know how important tax revenue is. To the members of the Republican Party, before I go, I want to ask you a question. How confident are you in the electability of our current president and Senate? I want you to think on that before you dismiss people like me who contribute to our community every day, even though we don't have cars to take us to our places of work and play. I want you to think also about what enabling that your party has allowed our president to do. And I want you to know that local politics won't shield you from being voted out of office. Think on it. That is all. Anything else? Good day then.
John Budnick.
Good afternoon, Honorable Chair, Vice Chairs, Acting Minority Leader, I'm not sure who that is, but honorable members of the legislature. I want to talk for a moment about the problem of drug and alcohol abuse. It has gotten much more severe during the COVID crisis period. That needs to be addressed. I'll leave how in your capable hands. I want to speak right now about three people. I sent a letter to the chair at the beginning of the month about three people who should be considered perhaps for naming of something in the Mitchell Field complex. They are Eleanor Patricia Smith, also known as the fabulous flying flapper from Freeport, who started her flying career at the age of 7 in Hicksville, New York, and was duly licensed by the age of 16, and by the age of 17 was flying under all the bridges in New York City. And in a poll of aviators in 1930, outpolled Amelia Earhart for the best female aviator in America. Next, we have a fellow. His name is Eugene Jacques Bourard. He fled Georgia as his father was about to be lynched. Somehow that didn't happen. Got on a tramp steamer that was German, ended up in Paris, and during World War I joined the French Foreign Legion. And then after being wounded several times in action and gaining several medals, the French Army, and then thereafter transferred to the French Armée de l'Air, the French Air Force, and is credited with shooting down 2 German pilots by order of President Wilson, whose segregationist rule in America during World War I. He was prohibited from becoming part of the Lafayette Escadrille, and accordingly he is not noted upon the plaque for the Lafayette Escadrille at the Nassau County Cradle of Aviation Museum. He, during World War II, was a French intelligence agent in Le Bureau d'Examen, And during the 1950s, he was so renowned, he was called upon by Charles de Gaulle to help relight the eternal flame. He was the only American and the only black. Please consider him. He spent the rest of his life flying up and down Rockefeller Center, running elevators in his various uniforms with his medals on, appeared many times on the Today Show and other talk shows. He is buried just over the Nassau County line in Queens in the French cemetery, because he was not allowed to be buried in the American cemetery because they prevented him from getting into the United States Armed Forces in World War I. Although in about 1992 or so, he was posthumously made a lieutenant in the United States Air Force. Moving on to the United States Air Force, we have a fellow who should be honored at this time of year because it's Hispanic American Culture Month. His name is Chuck Elwood Ricardo Quezada. He was based, many times at Mitchell Field. During World War II, he became the head of tactical air forces in Europe. Later, he became the head of the United States Air Force Tactical Air Command and also the, the Federal Continental Air Force Command. He was one of the few people who ever be the commanding officer of two Air Force commands at the same time. He left the service in 1951. Later, Eisenhower relied upon him to break up NACA, so that part of it became NASA, and the other part of it became the Federal Aviation Authority, which Eisenhower named him to be the first head of.
Okay, okay, John, you have to sum up.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
I hope you will remember these people. Thank you. Have a nice day. I'll speak to other things as it comes to pass.
All right.
God bless you, one and all.
Speaker we have
And thank you for your time and trouble.
Thank you.
I hope you have the various biographical information that I had sent with that letter, Mr. Chairman, dated September 3rd.
Yep, we do have that.
Have a great day. God bless you.
Thank you. Jeff Perez.
Hi, Jeff Perez. I'm from Glen Cove, resident all my life, Nassau County. I want to discuss the issues of budget cuts that you're, for the youth and for drug and mental health services and transportation. I lived in Glen Cove all my life. We'll start with transportation. The N27 never ran on Sundays, and they eventually did. Then they cut, when you privatized it, they cut the services, and the N27 no longer runs on the weekends. So how could a person that works in Glen Cove, that relies on public transportation, that travels to Glen Cove or travels out of Glen Cove, rely on the transportation to go to work? Now let's go to the N21. The N21 to Flushing. Much to my dismay, I had to get my car serviced, unfortunately, in Douglaston at a dealership. Much to my dismay, the 21, I waited, wasn't available. They cut the N21 from Flushing to Glen Cove. So if you're going to take a bus now to Glen Cove, you have to take the 20 to Roslyn. Then you have to get off at Roslyn, catch the 23 to catch the 27 to Glen Cove. You have to take 3 buses. Does that make sense? I don't think so, because now you're wasting fuel and resources, people trying to get home. I like to bring up the issue of the, mental health services, etc. there's a lot of cutbacks. And unfortunately, where I'm from in Glen Cove, there used to be an inpatient psychiatric unit. But now people that have mental emergencies have to go all the way out to Suffolk County or all the way out to Queens. That's the nearest place. So the neighboring families that live in the area now can't, their loved ones can't visit them locally. They have to go all the way out if they can make it. So I'm asking that you restore those services. I'm also asking that in prevention, this is good for crime prevention. If you increase local counseling and for domestic violence, etc., that will reduce the funds so the police can do other things because they have other responsibilities, and you'll take, you don't want to put too much responsibilities. It's a lot of responsibilities for them that they don't want to take. It's not what they're getting paid for. They're getting paid to actually reprimand criminals. So, and our youth, what the gentleman said before, you're cutting the youth services. And you cut the youth services, you're going to lose, there might be more crime also. So now as far as finance, the NIFA, you can't, they're dictating what you're doing. My best suggestion to you to do is to file for bankruptcy. When you file for bankruptcy, that relieves you of debt and you could start all over again. I say forget about Moody's, because if you look at economics, basic economics, it's like your own personal credit rating. If you don't use your credit card, or if you pay off your credit card and you don't apply for credit, your credit ratings go down. This is the same thing with municipalities. The way Moody's works, if you do not borrow any money, if you do not bond out, then your ratings go down, when it should be the opposite. And the other suggestion maybe is if you could renegotiate the bonds, if you can get NIFA to renegotiate it on your behalf to a lower bond, then you'll have less to worry about, less to pay for. And do not borrow, try not to borrow anymore. Try to do it from fines and collections, etc., and fees. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Perez. Any other public comment? All right. Move to the business of the legislature, starting off with the emergencies. Mike, you want to call the emergencies?
Thank you. Emergency for clerk item 236-20, emergency resolution number 23-2020, an emergency resolution declaring an emergency for immediate action upon an ordinance supplemental to the annual appropriation ordinance in connection with the Department of Shared Services. Emergency clerk item 237-20, emergency resolution number 24-2020, an emergency resolution declaring an emergency for immediate action upon an ordinance supplemental to the annual appropriation ordinance in connection with the medical examiner. Emergency for clerk item 238-20, emergency resolution number 25-2020, an emergency resolution declaring an emergency for immediate action upon an ordinance supplemental to the annual appropriation ordinance in connection with the medical examiner.
Okay, thank you. Legislator Ford makes a motion to establish the emergency, seconded by Legislator Bino. Any debate or discussion on establishing the emergencies? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Okay, the emergencies have been established. I'll call the three items, 236, 237, 238. Ordinances supplemental to the annual appropriation ordinance in connection with the Department of Shared Services and the medical examiner. Moved by Legislator DeReggie Whitten, seconded by Legislator Walker. So those three items are before us. Kay, do we have speakers on the emergencies?
Hi, Graham Long with the Department of Shared Services. Graham Long, L-O-N-G.
Kind of difficult to hear you with the mask, unfortunately.
I'm sorry?
It's not just you, it's all of us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This supplemental appropriation is for New York State funds that we recently received to be used for census outreach efforts. As you might be aware, the census count has to be completed by the end of this month, and New York State has provided funds to several different counties to be used, to be distributed to local non-for-profits who will in turn use that in their census hard-to-count areas. All of the non-for-profits were pre-approved by New York State, and the county, back when we were initially supposed to start this at the beginning of the year, the county actually asked for applications from all of the non-for-profits, and we reviewed them and determined a certain amount of money to give, allotment to give to each non-for-profit based on what they were able to accomplish and what their needs were in terms of their outreach efforts. Obviously, that was all put on hold by New York State in March with no time frame given for when or if the funds would actually be submitted to each county. We were informed in mid-August that we would be receiving a certain amount, half of the original intended amount, which is $332,055. We were informed about that in mid-August, and we're still not given a time frame on when the funds were actually going to be submitted to the county. So we just received them. We just received them last week, and hence the reason we're coming to you for the supplemental appropriation now as an emergency.
I guess the question that we all have is, it's September 21st. The deadline is September 30th. Has this money already been spent? Is this reimbursement, or is this something that's going to be spent in the next 9 days?
Some of it will be spent in the next 9 days. Most of it, the program wasn't intended to be a reimbursement, but because of the time frame and the late distribution of the funds, we informed each of the non-for-profits that it's going to function as a reimbursement for most of their efforts, many of which they've been working on for several months now.
Okay. Do they submit vouchers or something like that to the county to get reimbursed?
They will submit vouchers to United Way. United Way is under contract with the county. They're a pre-approved vendor, and we will be submitting the entirety of the funds to United Way, and then they will manage the distribution to each of the not-for-profits.
And that's in compliance with state requirements in terms of these monies?
Yes, and most of the other counties that are receiving these funds are doing it in the same fashion.
Right. Any other questions?
So, are you considering that you deal with United Way, which is the vendor of choice? Are you provided a list of the non-for-profits that worked on the census this year?
Yeah, we actually provided the list to United Way already, and we had predetermined the maximum amount of funds that each non-for-profit could get. So United Way isn't making the decision on this. They're actually just managing the distribution of it. All right, and then do you then ask for these agencies then to, I guess, show to you, the money that they spent and what efforts they made to reach out to people to fill out the census forms? Yes, and that's all required by New York State. So they will be submitting to United Way, and then we will have a chance to review it at Shared Services, exactly what efforts they completed and how they spent all the funds. Okay, and if all the funding is not spent, do we then return it back to New York State? That's correct. And we do anticipate that some of the organizations won't be able to spend their entire allotment due to the shortened time frame. All right, thank you.
Any other questions on this item? No?
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. Karen Dooling, Assistant Director of the Crime Lab. My two items are grant appropriations. One is a federal pass-through to the state, and the other is a state appropriation. First is $51,490. Second is $504,885. They're both no-match grants. We use these funds for a number of things, for overtime, but most importantly for supplies, for reagents, for equipment, and for things that we need to support our quality assurance system. And so the one grant of the larger amount was, the request for applicants was a little bit later this year due to COVID, so we're already a quarter into the grant. We just recently got that award.
Okay, I may have missed this, but is any of these related to COVID expenses?
No, neither of them are related to COVID expenses.
Okay. Any questions? Okay, I think we're good. Any discussion? All right. All in favor of these emergency items signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? They carry unanimously. Now we're going to the legislative calendar. We have a number of items that it's been agreed upon by the minority and majority that do not need further debate or discussion at this point. They went through committees a couple of weeks ago and had their hearings at that time. All right, so here are the consent items. Item 3, Ordinance 67. Item 4, Ordinance 68. Item 5, Ordinance 69. Item 6, Ordinance 70. Item 7, Ordinance 71. Item 8, Ordinance 72. Item 9, Ordinance 73. Item 10, Ordinance 74. Item 11, Ordinance 75. Item 12, Ordinance 76. Item 13, Ordinance 77. Item 14, Ordinance 78. Item 15, Resolution 75. 16, Resolution 76. 17, Resolution 77. 18, Resolution 78. 20, Resolution 80. 21, Resolution 81. 22, Resolution 82. 23, Resolution 83. 24, Resolution 84. 25, Resolution 85. 26, Resolution 86. 27, Resolution 87. 28, Resolution 88. 29, Resolution 89. 30, Resolution 90. 31, Resolution 91. 32, Resolution 92. 33, Resolution 93. 34, Resolution 94. 35, Resolution 95. 36, Resolution 96. 37, Resolution 97. 38, Resolution 98. 39, Resolution 99. 40, Resolution 100. 41, Resolution 101. 42, Resolution 102, 43, Resolution 103, 44, Resolution 104, 45, Resolution 105, 46, Resolution 106, 48, Resolution 108, 49, Resolution 109, 50, Resolution 110, 51, Resolution 111, 52, Resolution 112, 53, Resolution 113, 54, Resolution 114, 55, Resolution 115. Motion by Legislator McKevitt, seconded by Legislator Drucker. Any further debate or discussion on these items? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? They carry unanimously. Going back to the beginning of the calendar, item 1, it's a hearing on a proposed local law to amend the Nassau County Administrative Code in relation to lease of real property. Legislator Birnbaum makes that motion. Legislator Schaefer seconds it. All in favor of opening the hearing signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? The hearing is open. Is there a speaker on this? This is an administration-generated local law.
Good afternoon, legislators. Kevin Walsh from the Office of Real Estate Services. There's actually two items, I think, together with this, a local law and also an ordinance in connection with a lease, which I believe is item 17420. This is a connection with the proposed transfer, relocation of the Traffic Parking Violations Agency from 2224 Main Street in Hempstead to 801 Axon Avenue in Garden City. The new location may be familiar to many of you. It is the former location of the Department of Motor Vehicles off of Zeckendorf Boulevard. The site presents great opportunities for us because it has more than adequate parking for the needs of TIPFA. The use is not too much of a change from the existing use. The current lease was to expire in 2023. We do have an 18-month cancellation notice right, so this will give us enough time to build the site out for the specific needs of TIPFA, and also the landlord will be, at his own expense, replacing the HVAC systems, bringing them up to date, and also giving the county a $1.65 million tenant allowance. This will be a 21-year lease with an option of a 10-year renewal.
Can go into that, but for the moment, this relates to the local law. What does the local law do?
Yes, the local laws, whenever under the law, whenever the county is going to be a tenant in a lease that's going to exceed more than a 5-year period, and this will be a 21-year lease, requires a local law. We've done these local laws several times in the past. You may recall with 60 Charles Lindbergh. Some of our longer-term leases, we bring the local law along with the resolution.
Does the local law just apply to this property or no?
Yes, I think it'll be in effect for a certain time period, so we have the authority to enter into a long-term lease over 5 years.
Okay, according to the backup, we have it's effective immediately and expires on December 31st, 2020, so then it'll sunset.
Correct. That'll give us time to hopefully get the lease completed, all the approvals.
All right, so you brought up the item that goes with this, with the local law, which is the lease, so we might as well discuss that now as well. Now, you said there is more than adequate parking. How do you determine that there's more than adequate parking?
Well, actually, I've done several site visits myself, and I actually even have a plan that was just brought to me. It's about 268 new spaces. Currently, TIPFA in Hempstead only has allocated 45 spaces for employees in the garage, and then obviously the rest of the parking lot, which is now under renovations, closed indefinitely. You have to work with everybody, other tenants, the public who parks in the same area. This new location we're going to, it's going to be complete parking we're going to be the only tenant in the building, so it's going to be all the people coming for TIPFA business. And then on the one side of the building, in the back of the building, there's about 50 spaces that could be just set aside for employees and staff. So we've looked, with Director Dave Rich, we started looking at various sites centrally located in the county, and probably the biggest challenge to find a new location was parking. This was an ideal location when we learned that the Department of Motor Vehicles was moving on to a new location.
I think anyone who's been to that location with the DMV operation, the parking has been less than adequate from what I've observed, cars circulating the parking lot. Are you saying that TIPFA's operation is going to have less visits, less automobile visits to this property than the DMV operation did?
I believe so. I know what you're saying. I know when I've gone into motor vehicles at lunch, it could be very busy trying to find a parking location. I think this is more parking than we currently have available to us in Hempstead. I hate to speak on TIPFA's behalf, but I would say that the traffic of business for TIPFA, especially because they do some evenings and some off hours, would probably be significantly less than DMV, but it's still a pretty significant public use. Another attraction for 801 Accent is there's a bus stop if somebody wanted to come by bus, which is right there as well. It's centrally located.
So there are 50 spaces, you said before, that's behind the building, which can be used by TIPFA employees?
I'd say approximately, at least.
Would that accommodate all of TIPFA's employees, most of them?
TIPFA has, I believe, about 45 full-time employees. They have some part-timers, too. So I think that'll more than adequately meet the needs of the staff.
Okay, so that'll meet the needs of the staff. And you said that the site plan indicates there's 268 spaces for I guess, in that main parking lot for the facility.
That's correct. That's correct.
And that would be sufficient for TIPFA's operation?
I'm going to let Dave Rich speak on behalf of TIPFA.
Dave Rich, Executive Director of Traffic and Parking Violations Agency. We believe that parking at the new location would be adequate to meet our needs.
268 spaces, is that reserved for TIPFA's operation?
It would be just separately for the public to park. In addition, there will be the additional parking spots for our employees as well as our judges.
Okay. No, I think what I was asking was that the 268 spaces, they're not being shared with other office buildings in the vicinity. It'll simply be for people who are going to TIPFA for their
Correct.
business.
It's a separate parking lot, so it's just dedicated to the TIPFA operations in that building because it'll be their parking lot or our lot.
Did the agreement with the Village of Hempstead, did that lapse? In terms of his agreement that TIPFA could use a certain number of spaces, parking spaces,
So the current, we have a parking license currently with the Village of Hempstead for TIPFA. I think we are allocated 45 spaces for employees, and the public obviously is not part of that agreement. They park themselves. The good thing about that agreement, this body renewed it. I guess we did a 2-year renewal about a year ago, a year and a half, maybe a little less than a year ago. I think October 2019. We can prorate spaces. As long as we give them 30 days notice, we can take spaces out of that license. We do pay about $4 a space a day to the village. We still have another office building over there, probably where at 40 Main. So we still have several county departments that are over in that location.
Is it anticipated that other county offices or operations will be moved to this new location?
It is not anticipated, but we look at all the various spaces in the county to see where there's a need could be met. In addition to TIPFA at this location, we had some storage in the basement of 22, 24, 26 that have been used both by TIPFA and the district attorney's office, some storage of files. So we'll be looking to see how we can work with storage, with maybe using other locations as well. One point that Dave just made, a very important consideration I didn't add, with the garage being closed indefinitely right now, it certainly impedes the current operation because there's really it's not easy to find parking right now for people coming to TIPFA to challenge a ticket or to do business with TIPFA. Now you will have to either park in the commercial lot across the street on Main Street behind the businesses, or find a lot over by Town Hall. So it's a significantly further walk for folks to come to TIPFA.
Do we know how many visits there are on an average day to TIPFA? Not from employees, obviously. We're talking about members of the public.
On our peak days, we look at roughly 1,000 people, with the majority being in the morning. In the morning, we probably, and on a peak day again, we're looking at 700. On average, it's about 500, and that's throughout the day. That's in roughly, say, a 5-hour period that we're open to the public.
Okay, but on the peak day, you're getting 1,000 people, and the majority in the morning. How is 268 spaces going to accommodate that?
Well, right now there's currently a constraint with parking as it is. We believe that the new property would be able to accommodate the parking, and I believe there's also some parking on the street as well in that area.
Did the county engineers or any outside engineers do any sort of traffic study, parking study at this location?
Traffic, DPW personnel, both chief architect at DPW and facilities, have done several site visits with us and also found that the site was adequate for parking for our needs.
It is concerning. Everything that's been said up to now has been reassuring, but it is concerning when you have a peak day of 1,000 people and the bulk coming in the morning, and the 268 spaces. We're just concerned that you're going to have those peak days, you're going to have those parking lots filled in the morning, and hundreds to possibly cars circling, trying to get a space.
I would just like to say, though, with COVID, we've actually re-engineered the way our process. We will no longer have, a count of 1,000 visitors on a daily basis. With COVID, we've limited how many people come in, and even in the future, we plan on being able to maximize our operations so that we won't have this influx of people having to wait on lines outside the building or cram our hallways. Like I said, we've kind of looked at our current operations, and we've figured out a better, safer plan for the future operations.
Anyone else have questions? Legislator Bino.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. My questions are going to be directed to Mr. Rich. Mr. Rich, you've stated that you re-engineered. Could you talk a little bit about that? Because I have some familiarity with the area. It's in my district, but I've visited the DMV there once or twice. And parking, as I remember, there were a lot of no parking signs in that area. And what surrounds that area are other commercial entities. And I can see folks then trying to park in another commercial parking lot and potentially getting their cars towed. So I am concerned, based on the number that you just provided us as your average daily visitors. You say because of COVID you re-engineered. I'd like to hear about your re-engineering, and then give us a number that would reflect the daily average visitor.
What we've done is our calendar court system, which will handle roughly 90% how we're able to manage the number of visitors. Let's talk about a ticket, for example. When you get a ticket, roughly there's what you call a 42-day return date, which is your due date for a ticket. We, as an agency, don't have control over how many tickets are issued out on the street. We just manage, and when we talk about these 1,000 really heavy-duty days, it's usually after a holiday or maybe on a Monday, and there might have been some type of ticket blitz out there. What we've done now is our court system only allows 30 visitors per half hour to come in and appear on a certain court date. What we do with all the extra tickets, if you want to call it the extra, or the ones that go beyond that maximum cap, they are now pushed out to a future date. So that's one of the ways we've done it. We also have what we call an appointment system that Nassau County IT built us. That'll be for the Defense Council, where we will limit how many visitors come in. And for the folks that don't have a future court date, those folks can also register through the appointment system. Say they had a suspended license, they missed their court date a couple of years ago. We'll be able to manage how many people actually walk through our building.
Okay, so then you answered Presiding Officer Nicolello's question earlier about the average visitor, the count of the average visitor on a daily basis. You said about 1,000, then you said the majority of the folks come in the morning. That, I guess, was prior to this COVID adjustment. Can you now tell us what that number looks like with the COVID adjustment?
We probably were looking at right now a maximum of 350, and we're going to basically, that number may change, depending on how we see how many people actually appear that say they're going to appear. So right now it's average, let's say 7 hours. What did I say? I think my math's off. It's about 420 people. If you do 60 per hour times 7 hours, it's about 420 people. And that's throughout the day, through a 7-hour period.
So then again, I guess my concern is also that there's not going to be adequate parking. I'm afraid that if people then think that because they have an appointment or they're in this 30-minute block that they have to come in, that they're going to become desperate because they're afraid they're going to incur other fees and fines if they don't get in there to pay the ticket, or to be, go before the judge or whatever it is that they need to do, that they're going to become desperate and then park in someone else's lot and end up getting towed. And I just feel like if we know what the daily average count of our or the max number that we have, we should manage to that higher number, not manage to a number that's almost 50% less than for parking. What you're telling me is it's 400 and something folks potentially. What we're saying is we're only going to give 50% of those people parking. There isn't any street parking over there. That area's not set up for that. I'm really concerned about that. We're talking about a group of people that are already, behind the 8 ball because they have to already pay fees because, there was some kind of violation. We want to get the money. We don't want to set it up and make it, set them up for failure to make it harder for them. If we're moving from a situation that we know the parking wasn't adequate enough, why would we be going to another situation where we still know the parking isn't adequate enough?
Well, legislator, we're not saying that they're occupying all 420 spots at one time. What we're saying in general, we're trying to get the 30 people in and out in a 30-minute period. So we don't anticipate, all 265 spots, or, we said 420 max being occupying, spending the whole day there.
All right, but at some point you said 300. I heard all the numbers.
I said, yeah.
I didn't write everything down, but at one point you said your heavier period might be in the morning, and that they might be. So there's probably another way to adjust this, right? So if you're telling me 200 spots or whatever, I suggest that maybe you go back and look at your software or whatever IT built out for you to be able to manage those blocks, and just have it so that your peak hours should never exceed 200 and some odd folks, so that everyone who comes gets a spot. So if you can adjust to have a flow, just make sure that you're adjusting. If you could promise me that, then maybe I'll have a sense of comfort that you're going to adjust so that you never have more people in your building then you have spots.
I just want to point out, just to reiterate too a little bit, you know, again, there is a rotation obviously clearly during the day for parking, and you know, the current situation, I don't think we ever had that many spaces available, even including with the garage and the garage having certain areas closed off for a long period of time. Fortunately, to my knowledge, everybody who's ever come to business has found a spot eventually, and you know, what's attractive about this is the fact that the field will be ours, we'll be able to manage it. It's a one-story building, another attraction for people who, you know, have special needs to get into our building. And I could speak for Dave. We looked at many sites where they said, well, we can give you parking a block away or around the corner. We looked at a site we could call in West Hempstead, which was a beautiful building, but they said we can use parts of buildings and parts of parking areas and flow into a residential neighborhood. This site is attractive because it's unique in the sense that it does have a much larger parking footprint than, you know, most office buildings in the area. And with the flow and with the changes, I feel very confident to be adequate parking. Even with DMV, as busy as it was, and some days I did park a couple times in the street, I always found a spot eventually, and I know the DMV traffic was heavy all day long.
So, and I just want to make a point. You made a point about the parking situation in Hempstead. There is ample parking in Hempstead, maybe not in that Tipford spot, but you made it very, you yourself said there's commercial parking where they can, you know, park across the street in that V&T supermarket parking. There's ample parking there, and then there is street parking where folks can park in the area. That's a different situation. Is it convenient? No, because they have to, you know, they have to walk a little bit. But over in that spot, there's not going to be any other alternatives for them to park. And so I think that's really the distinction between what's happening in Hempstead currently and what is going on at the proposed new spot site. So I think if you can make these adjustments that you've made for COVID, I think we can make adjustments to ensure that if there's problems with parking, that you have to then, you know, spread out your 30-minute intervals a little further to make sure that people can get spots, because they're not going to have any alternatives there.
And we could do that. That's what I was trying to say. Our system will allow us to manage the throughput.
I asked you to just put that on record, that you commit to us, or at least to me, because I'm asking the question, that you'll make those adjustments in the future if we're finding that there's problems with parking.
Yes, we will do that. If, you know, post-COVID, you know, we'll go back to, say, what we call a normal operation. If we see peak hours where it can't handle parking, we will adjust the throughput and the number of visitors that are invited to come to TIPFA.
I would think that for the sake of your own employees, that would be a concern, because people are not happy to go there to begin with, and then if you have them struggling to get a parking space in the lot and it's full, I wouldn't want to be working inside when they come in. Legislator Walker?
I just want to understand. So right now you schedule, say 9 o'clock comes, and you schedule, there's 60 people in a half hour increments you do?
We're going to do 30 per half hour for now.
Okay, so 30 people in a half hour. So within an hour and a half, you only have 90 people scheduled in that hour and a half?
Yes.
Okay, so you would assume, for the most part, hopefully, you know, people aren't going to get there an hour and a half earlier before they're scheduled. So you're hoping that you would basically have a group come, those people would leave, there'd be more ample parking for, like, as each half hour passes, even if people went there 45 minutes early, you know, if I had to go, I would be concerned about parking, so I'd make sure I left in time so I wouldn't be late and annoyed the judge even more than they're already annoyed at me. So you would never have that larger number wanting to park all at once. So that's why you're pretty, you know, positive that you'd have enough parking.
Yes.
And then I would think that you basically could never go back to the old way, because if you say that I think at one time you mentioned 1,000 people in a period of time. I mean, obviously, unless all those people carpool together, which I doubt that's happening, there'd never be room for enough parking. So kind of have to keep it to that. I mean, maybe you'll see you can increase it a little bit, but I would think we'd have to stay on that. And I would imagine it would make people to have to go there lives easier too. If you knew your appointment was kind of in a specific time, give or take a little bit of time either way, you'd be in front of the judge and out, hopefully. Not have to sit there for hours.
And that's our goal. We want to make the throughput a little bit faster, a little easier, more efficient. It'll allow less wait time. And the bigger problem that we also have now is you may have received complaints where people used to be lined up out on the sidewalk in inclement weather. We don't want to do that anymore.
Okay, that's.
Legislator Ford?
Good afternoon. Considering the parking, and I know that when you testified, like even with Hempstead, that there were alternate places that people were able to overflow to or go to because of the parking garage that is now out of service. Have you looked at any of the other commercial parking lots? I know across the street is Verizon, and they pretty much is a private. But down toward Old Country Road, what business is that there? Is that one of the malls or something, or to take a look at to see whether or not there's something that if worse came to worse, that you may be able to work out a deal to offer overflow parking up in that area?
Yeah, that's a good point. There are a lot of commercial businesses over there. You're right, Verizon is right across. I actually worked in the building across at 777 Zeckendorf for a while, which was a law firm when I was in private practice, and I believe it's a medical use now. If the need arises, they've even, there has been some commercial growth down there. Maybe around the corner, there's a couple of hotels, that may have additional parking that's not fully utilized. That could be. If that need arises, we would certainly look at that. I mean, we feel pretty confident, like Dave said, that this is going to be more than adequate on-site parking to meet the need. That's why the site's so attractive. Another thing is Dave mentioned the current building. The configuration was tough in bad weather. A lot of people would be stuck waiting outside. The configuration of this building actually has a pretty decent lined inside area where people could wait if the weather is inclement, on a bad day. So I know that's happened to me in traffic when I was at DMV.
Okay, and what, like for the renovations, because I know that, you're not moving it into this building, with the DMV and keep it exactly the same way, because don't you also need like hearing rooms with, hearing officers or judges, and then as well as to be able to take, payments from people or however you work this. Who's going to do the renovations, and do we pay for that, and how much would that be?
Yes, so that's another reason why the building was kind of attractive. There will be changes because the uses, it's similar but different, right? There still will be, people coming in to pay tickets in cash. One thing I didn't realize with this space at DMV, there is an area of this building where it was set up as hearing rooms. I believe the DMV conducted some certain DWI hearings there. So it's got a nice setup already. For that, we will probably reconfigure the counters and the security to, secure our employees and the public. So there will be changes. The landlord is giving us a $55 per square foot allowance. And like I said, we'll be putting a new HVAC system in the building as well. He's responsible, as most landlords, for the major structural, such as the roof and so forth. The use isn't changing too much from the landlord perspective, so he's comfortable with the county as a tenant, and we're attractive because we're willing to do a longer term, a 20-year, 21-year lease. So it was a nice fit. And we looked at other spaces where they didn't have a lot of those, those synergies to really work for the needs of this particular agency.
Well, as long as you maintain it, trying to get the people in and out, and I'm going to guess that maybe you based the 30 people, 30 minutes on a normal length of time that most people spend at TPVA when they're, I guess, maybe paying their tickets or going to a hearing officer, or?
Well, the new space in general, just to say, the waiting area itself is going to be triple in size. Right now, I think we're constrained to something like 72. Right now, we know that the new area could hold at least 300 for the waiting area, as well as we'll be able to put more prosecutors. Right now, we only have the ability to have 4 prosecutors, but usually we'll have 7 on top of each other, and that really doesn't give you the privacy. And the same thing with the cashier windows. Right now, we only have about 4. We'll be able to have 7 cashier windows. So we'll be able to increase our throughput.
So then actually you could make it like speedier in a way. Like, that instead of waiting online because there's 3, if you have 7 people can virtually maybe even go in, spend 15 minutes and they're out.
Yes, that's ideally what we're looking for.
Okay, and you'll constantly monitor how well this is? Only because, like everybody says, you know, they're angry enough as it is because they now got caught and they got to pay fines. So
What
we
we've
want
done
to
is-
protect our employees.
Yes, what we've done is we have, you know, based on our original court system, which we're actually updating either this month or next month, we have 2 additional applications that help check in folks as well as make the appointment system. Between those 3 systems, we're going to be able to look at what the average time is from the time they check in to the time that they leave.
Okay. All right, thank you very much.
Any other questions? What is the urgency with respect to the lease?
Honestly, we had been working on this lease February and March, and obviously with the, you know, the situation, really not having an opportunity to do it face-to-face with the parties in council, sit-down negotiation, it's lingered. We had a landlord who was at least new to the county disclosure process, so it's taken time, and as much as, you know, the pandemic situation has changed the real estate market, we know there's a lot of other interest in the building for commercial uses and even retail uses because of the adequate parking. And, you know, we're concerned if we don't get it approved, we could lose to, you know, a competitor, to be frank.
Is there anything in the any sort of agreement that would, you know, with a deadline in it, or you're simply just saying in general?
Not in a specific deadline, but, you know, like I said, we really had gotten this completed in April, and, you know, we're looking at October, so we are, you know, and with our process of giving notice and so forth, we're already getting to look towards the end of the current lease. So this, you know, we're concerned there is other interest in the building.
Okay, I mean, I think you've heard some of the legislators, I think all of us have concerns about this parking situation, and we appreciate you providing your feelings about how it will work out, Mr. Rich. But, I mean, it really is something that's within the expertise of an engineer or something to tell us, yes, this will work, this is how many spaces you need for this operation. I would feel much more assured if someone from the county, an engineer or someone, could give that representation to us. Again, you're an attorney, you're a very good one, but usually when there's a parking issue, the applicant or so would present some sort of testimony as to, you know, the parking situation. Do we have time in 2 weeks to get additional information or get representation by someone from the county to give us those assurances? Because ultimately, we're going to get the calls in the first instance when people aren't able to get, you know, or the lot's full and aren't able to get inside. You know, your employees are going to get the initial anger, and then ultimately the legislators are going to be on the receiving end of that as well. Do we have time in 2 weeks to get a county engineer to tell us that this is a sufficient number of spaces?
I don't know whether we could get that in that time frame.
Anyone want to weigh in? Sure. Legislator Reggie Whitten and Legislator Birnbaum.
Thanks, Rich. Can you just tell me again how many parking spaces when the parking lot was in full functioning did you have at this location now?
In the new location?
No,
or
in the old
existing
location.
We had 45 spaces allocated to TIPFA, but we had, in the garage, we probably had a total of close to 200 spaces in the garage available.
So in total, you had 245 with a full garage?
Well, it's about 200 in the garage before it was closed.
So it's approximately the same number as where we're going, but there was on-street parking.
Right, but
in a commercial
also,
lot.
but
Okay.
the 200 spaces were not for TIPFA. They were also for county employees, not including the public. I would say we probably had spaces allocated for about 200 county employees. For another building, too, with 40 Main, we have many county employees also.
How long has TIPFA been at the current location in Hempstead?
1995.
Okay, because I was just wondering, the reason this is coming to us is the local law is changing it, rather than 5 years, it's 21 years. How did you come to that number, 21?
21, well, 20 years is relatively customary for a longer-term lease. It's when a landlord then can sometimes finance his lease. And with the 21 years, we were able to get more significant concessions in terms of a tenant work allowance for our build-out, for our needs. So typically, we did a 60 Charles lease. I think it was similar. I think when we renewed that lease, it was also about 20 years.
All right, thank you.
You said before that the TIFRA's time at its current location is drawing near to the end, correct?
That's correct. Expires, I believe, February 2023.
2023. So, okay.
So it sounds far away, but
yeah,
in the world of getting the lease done,
some
it's
months. All right. Can we get, Katie, can we get a representation from the administration that they are in support of this and that they believe that this parking situation can be adequately managed?
Katie Horst from the administration. Yes, we do support this move. We did have the county architect take a look at it, and sorry, Ken. I believe the county architect did believe that there was enough parking for the flow that they anticipated coming through TIFA.
Okay, so the administration believes that this parking situation can be managed.
Yes.
Okay. Legislator Ford.
Considering that in the back you have the 45 spots or 50 spots, can you make sure that the employees park back there, that it would be employee parking, and that they must park back there so that the spaces toward the front for the people who do come, that those spaces will be available for them?
We could definitely do that. I mean, when we were also anticipating even putting signage up that would state this is employee parking only also, so that way the public doesn't go into that lot as well.
Perfect. All right, thank you.
All right. Any other questions? Legislator Bynum.
Thank you, Rich. Mr. Rich, how many employees do you have?
Currently, we have 72, but that's a mixture of 40, about 40 or 42 full-time, and the part-timers, they split. Basically, you could say half of the part-timers are there on a daily basis.
So our employee parking lot is not even sufficient.
Some of our employees don't drive.
And there's a bus service. The bus comes by there.
There's a bus stop right on the street.
yes, there is a bus stop on exit for this.
Anyone else? Anyone participating remotely?
Yeah, Presiding Officer.
Yes,
Yeah, may
Mr.
I ask
Gaylor.
a question?
Go ahead.
Okay, yeah, for Mr. Rich. Mr. Rich, has the county considered any other alternate locations besides this facility? And I only ask that because there's a reason why DMV moved. Part of it was parking, plus the age of the facility itself. DMV chose to go to another location that affords it greater parking opportunities. Have we looked at alternate locations beside this one?
We've been looking at least the past 3 or 4 years. One of the main things, one is parking. Two is also that we need something on a main floor because of the volume of visitors that we have. Using elevators or stairs provides a concern for the constituents. So we have been looking for the past 3 or 4 years.
Okay. But so you've been at the traffic agency for quite a long time. In your opinion, this new facility would be able to provide adequate parking?
That is my belief.
Mm-hmm. Okay, very good. Thank you. No further questions, Presiding Officer.
Somebody else had a question on the Mr. Budnick. It's the legislators right now. We'll have public comment after we finish our round of questions. Did someone else remotely? I thought I heard somebody say they had a question. But do we know what the number of visits DMV had there per day? I guess
I don't know the visits. The lot was usually full when I was there. I know that. Yes.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen. Mr. Budnick, you had something to add, and any other public comment as well?
You are considering 2 two separate sets of things. First is a local law that would authorize the county to enter into such as a lease as this. A local law, once you pass it, and the county executive has then signed it, must be accepted for filing by the Secretary of State in Albany before it becomes effective. Therefore, number 19 cannot be actually voted upon today in any case because it is ultra vires. It is beyond the scope of your ability right this minute and for the rest of at least this day until the Secretary of State has accepted the local law for filing. You don't have the power to enter into a lease in excess of 5 years as is provided by this proposed lease. Number one. Number two, may I ask if the American Automobile Association, the Nassau County Bar Association, the Nassau Criminal Courts Bar Association, or any of the Nassau County Bar Associations have been consulted with regard to this, and also whether the Nassau County Traffic Safety Department has been involved in reviewing the various issues about the lease itself and the parking and the various issues that may be involved in that, and also whether the Nassau County Planning Commission has reviewed and voted upon this particular proposal to move Nassau County TVB to this location on Axon Boulevard. May I ask these questions and ask you to ask these questions because I think we need to have additional input as to number 19 only. I do believe that number 1 and 2 should be voted upon today by this august body so that at least you have a situation where it is not ultra vires to be voting upon number 19. Thank you very much.
Mr. Walsh? Do we have the ability to vote on number 19?
I'm sorry, which is item number 19?
19 is the lease. We actually, this item that we're under consideration now is the local law to amend the administrative code.
Yes, so the local law is authorizing the county to enter into the lease. The legislature will be authorizing the county executive to execute the lease after it's approved by not only this body, the comptroller, and NIFA.
Actually, Mr. Putnick's point was that it has to be, the law has to be on file with the state. It has to be filed as an administrative or ministerial act. It has to be filed with the state. Therefore, it's not effective until such happens. And that we can't vote on number 19 until such time as that ministerial act is taken.
To my knowledge, we've done several long-term leases where in the same meeting we've approved the local law and the actual item, the lease. It's authorizing the county executive to enter into the long-term lease, which is not happening today. It will be happening in the future if all other approvals are obtained. So this is just the authorization because of what New York State County law says.
All right, that actually, right. What about, do you know if this does this go to the Planning Commission?
It doesn't. However, we did go to the Planning Department for a secret determination, which is included in your package. It was found to be an unlisted action, no significant impact on the environment, not surprisingly. Thank you.
Okay, any other legislators again? No? Any other public comments? All right. Hearing none, we will have to close the hearing on this item 1. So I think I need a motion to close the hearing, moved by Legislator Kennedy, seconded by Legislator Bino. All in favor of closing the hearing signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, carries unanimously. Item 2 is a vote on a local law to amend the Nassau County Administrative Code in relation to a lease of real property. Moved by Legislator Bino, seconded by Legislator Kennedy. Have any further debate or discussion among the legislators? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Carries unanimously. Now, moving to item 19, Resolution 79. It's a resolution making certain determinations pursuant to SECRA and authorizing the county executive on behalf of the county to execute a lease agreement between the County of Nassau as tenant and 801 Axon Co. LLC as landlord. Moved by Legislator Lapizan, seconded by Legislator Kennedy. Any further debate or discussion on this item at this time? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Carries unanimously. Okay. We have one item, and Legislator Bino is not in the room at the moment, which is good. This is item 47, Resolution 107. Legislator Szilagyi. Yep, sorry. Legislator Szilagyi has recused himself. He's left the room. He will not be participating in any debate or discussion. This is resolution number 107 to confirm the county executive's appointment of Natalie Mitchell-Kange to the Minority Affairs Council. Moved by Legislator Rhodes, seconded by Legislator Millet. Any debate or discussion? Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Carries unanimously. That concludes the business of the legislature. I know there are some people still on the video conference. Just want to let you know that that all of the minority affairs appointments have now been approved, and all the rest of the items on this calendar have been approved. So we call the consent item the consent calendar, so you may have missed the fact that your individual item was already approved. Anyway, motion to adjourn. Mr. Rhodes?
I just wanted to make the comment on behalf of the Minority Affairs Committee that we're so very much looking forward to working with each of you. Congratulations on your appointment.
Okay. Yes, exactly. And we are very much excited about the fact that the Minority Affairs Council will be fully staffed in terms of a board that can have a quorum and proceed with the business of the county. Anyone else? All right. Motion by Legislator Rhodes to adjourn the meeting. Seconded by Legislator DeRidge-Whitten. All in favor of adjourning signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Carries unanimously.